Hey guys, it's City Kapatoa, and today I'd like to revisit the topic of staying motivated for long-term personal projects. Now, a couple of years ago, I did a video covering this topic, why I think motivation itself is quite useless, how many of us make the mistake of depending on external factors, and how we can only look at things from within, things that we do have control over, and we're not depending on some external factor. However, when I look at it again, I don't think that video seemed fleshed out, and I felt like I didn't really have a clear idea of what I was trying to say about motivation. Nowadays, I have a more straightforward take on motivation itself. Almost 90% of the time when I stream, someone in the chat usually asks me, how do I stay motivated to work on my own projects while maintaining a full-time job and doing multiple projects? Like, they see me working on one animation project, they see me working on a bigger animation project, and they're also seeing me do art while still having my foot in the industry. Honestly, most of that is just availability of my lifestyle and my schedule, but we're getting off topic here. First of all, I want to say that I can agree that motivation can be good at the beginning of things. Motivation can be the ignition for taking initiative. It's that feeling you have that makes you want to start something and just get it done. Motivation can be a powerful supplement where you can get a lot of good work done at light speed. There was one time I was so motivated that I finished about 2 shots fully animated and colored in lightning speed. So no doubt, you feel good when you're motivated and you just want to excel. However, feeling demotivated can work the same way. Imagine something happened, whether it's a news that you heard or a circumstance or a feeling that you just have, it just kills your motivation to continue and it works against you, killing that drive to make things. When I reflect back on myself, I know that I got demotivated when I realized how much work I have to do for a project just by looking at the whole scope of the project. That gives me anxiety. Most of that is just going to be laborious work. It's no longer going to be fun and exciting. And I remember talking to a friend who had doubts about his own film projects every time he sees an amazing student film surface online. And yeah, nowadays I feel inferior to a lot of great student films too. It's like, how can I keep up? And there might be a time where I can't just keep up anymore. And that's a thought that also demotivates me time to time. As a person who has slight ADHD, we act based on impulses. And that impulse affects our mood heavily. And there are things that we just can't control in terms of our focus. We can be highly attentive to something, but also highly affected by our own internal thoughts and emotions. But anyways, back to motivation. The problem I have with motivation and relying it as a source of finishing a personal project or continuing a long-term practice is that it's quite fickle, meaning that feeling of motivation changes a lot. Motivation can also be quite complex. It can come from a place where you just want to strive for something better, you want to learn, you want to improve, you want to become a better version of yourself, or maybe you're doing it out of spite. Maybe you're trying to prove someone else that you're better, or maybe you're motivated by fear, you're afraid of losing something, or it's all of them combined. I did that for a long time and it just made me angry most of the time. Now, on top of that, in your life, as life goes on, you get older, your values and beliefs and priorities start to change. My own personal goals in my life and career has changed over time, where the things that motivated me in the past, I can no longer relate to and it doesn't have the same feeling. 10 years ago, I would have dreamed to work at a place like Pixar or Disney, and that became the drive of my student short films. A few years ago, I aggressively wanted to be a director or even a showrunner, so that's kind of why I put myself out there, pitched a lot, and reached out to a lot of executives. Nowadays, I'm more motivated by independent productions or just making stuff just for the sake of making projects without trying to have a high expectation for it. And that stuff excites me more. Now, you could argue with me saying that because I did all these things inspired and motivated by all these goals that I had, I was able to finish a lot of these things. But the truth is, the feeling died out about 50% on the way. And there were many things that demotivated me from even finishing that project. One example is, back at school, we have a job fair. So we share process of our films and we share demo reels of animation and our story portfolios, our VizDev portfolios. And there were times I did not get a call back from a studio based on the work in progress stuff that I showed for my upcoming film. And it made me think, what's the point of finishing this film now, knowing that I didn't get a call back for a studio opportunity? And this is why having one motivation as your main drive to finish a film isn't worth it for long-term projects or long-term practices. And at that point, I had to rely on productivity strategies, willpower, and discipline. But how can one get to a place where they can constantly stay productive on a project? Or the questions I get asked on a lot of my stream sessions, how do I stay motivated? to stay productive on a project. Now, I did a video about this years ago on tips about how to stay productive on a personal project. Some of these tips include using a timer with intervals and breaks, recording your process as you make things so you can use it as documentation or education material later in the future, maybe to make a course or to make money out of it. Or maybe do it live with a community. Sometimes that's why I stream, to engage with an audience while I work on a project. Now, the overall advice I have is to treat a project like going to the gym. An individual decides, wow, I want to look sexy naked, so I'm going to start working out. So when that person starts going to the gym, they work out hard, having a goal of looking like a walking hard-on. The first 2 weeks, they feel great. They're so motivated and they're performing really well. But maybe they start being a little loose. They skip days because they just don't feel like it, or they start slowly returning to old habits. This continues on and on until they skip more days of working out to the point where they return to their old selves. There's going to be a time where that motivation dies down, that you don't want to go to the gym anymore, but you know it's important, and staying consistent with it has to be a habit. Going back to a production of a project, it's quite similar. There are times where I just don't feel highly motivated or driven enough to work on a project. And maybe it's because I blew my wad in the very beginning of a project to the point where I realized, oh my God, I'm just too tired. And when I start comparing my workload from when I was super passionate to how I feel later on where I'm not as motivated and not as productive, I start to compare myself to the previous days. And then that makes me demotivated. Now, what I would suggest is just to be realistic. Maybe give yourself a limited quota of how much to finish during a session. Maybe give yourself a certain time frame on working on a project. I have a whiteboard where I write tasks that need to be completed within a session or a day. I keep it realistic, where for a project, I will only paint a background or finish a rough passive animation. After I finish that, I just stop. I don't start on the next steps. I stopped working on the project for the time being, and at this point, I'm either working on another project or just taking a chill pill. This is so that I don't feel like I'm going on a full sprint on projects, like I'm blowing my wad. I also keep it flexible where I can make adjustments, give myself empty days if I need that leeway. Treat it like a marathon, because when it comes to long-term projects, that's what it is. Also, before I start working on a project for a day, I don't feel like working on it at all. I feel lazy, I feel tired, but usually getting into that flow state takes me about 30 to 45 minutes of just staying focused on a project. And then after that, I feel a bit calibrated on the project. I feel the groove, I feel the moves. It at least gets me warmed up and the ball rolling. That's why staying quite focused on a project for the first 30 to 45 minutes is quite crucial for me, just to get that momentum. So what's my overall takeaway from this? Motivation can be good as an ignition, as that first spark, but I would not cling onto it long term because it can work against you and the feelings change over time. At some point, you just have to work without relying on it. Treat it like going to the gym and pace yourself. Don't go full sprint, go at a steady pace, and only save those full sprint sessions for special occasions. Eventually, it's more about maintaining and creating a new, consistent habit. Anyways, that's how I feel about motivation again. Bye. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.